Hello everyone, greetings of the hour. Welcome to the English grammar lesson for classes 9 to 12. I'm Jolly Monsi. It is said, when you can't change the direction of the wind, adjust your sails. So here I am with online teaching, following the trends of modern learning. The topic that I have taken today is something that you have done in grade 8, but it holds importance up to grade 12. Today's topic is active and passive voice. By the end of the lesson, you would be able to understand about active and passive voice, the sentence structure of active and passive, very simple and easy steps that you would require to change the active to passive, and also come to know about some common mistakes that students make while changing the active to passive. We'll end the lesson with some exercises. So, let's get started. Active and passive voice. Look at the two sentences on your screen. There are two sentences given. The first one, the teacher started online teaching. And the second one, online teaching was started by the teacher. Now, how do you identify the two sentences as active or passive voice? Before that, let's look at the rules which are termed as golden rules for changing active to passive voice. The first one, when active sentence is converted to passive, the tense remains the same. I repeat, the tense remains the same. That means, if it is in the simple past tense, in passive voice too, it will be in simple past tense. If it is past perfect, it will remain as past perfect. Or continuous, it will remain as continuous tense, whether present or past, right? Sometimes students do get confused because they have learned about indirect speeches or reported speech. You know what happens in reported speech. In reported speech, if it is in the simple present tense, it changes into simple past tense, right? If it is in the past tense, it changes into past perfect tense. So there is a change in the tense. But when we change active to passive, the tense remains the same, right? The second golden rule, always the passive verb form is we3 or the third form of the verb. For example, base form of begin is begin, past simple of begin is began, and past participle or the we3 form, that is a third form of verb, changes to begun. So it means that in passive verb, we need to use the third form of the verb, always, right? The third one, passive voice begins with the object of the sentence. That is, Sam drives a new car. Suppose this is a sentence. Now, in passive voice, it becomes, a new car is driven by Sam. Note that Sam comes last in passive and car comes first. We shall learn in detail a little later. The next one, continuous tenses take being plus we3. For example, she was washing the clothes. Can you see that washing the clothes? It is in continuous tense, right? Past continuous, because the helping verb is was, right? So if it is in the continuous tense, we need to add being along with the third form of verb. So it changes to the clothes, which was the object, has come forward. The clothes were being washed by her. Yes? Then, if it is in perfect tenses take been. Like, she has broken the record. That is the perfect tense, has broken. It's a present perfect tense. So it will change into the record has been broken by her. Note the structure there. Has plus been plus V3. Now this is something that you have to learn by heart. This is the structure of or the requirement of changing active to passive voice depending on the tense. Look at the web chart here. There are 5 easy and simple steps to change active voice into passive voice. You can count it on your fingertips. Let's understand each step. To begin with, step 1. Identify the subject, verb, and object. That is SVO. S stands for subject, V stands for verb, and O stands for subject. So what do we have to do? The first step, we need to identify the subject in the sentence, the verb that is being used in the sentence, and the object in the sentence, right? Now, second step is swap. What do I mean by swap? When I say swap, we learned in the golden rules that the subject takes the place of the object and the object comes in the place of the subject in the passive voice. So that is the swapping that we are talking about. So unless and until you identify the subject and the object, you cannot change its positions. You cannot change its places, right? And the second step involves that we need to swap the places of the subject and the object. So keep in mind, the second step is to swap. We also need to check the pronouns over there, because while swapping, the pronoun that was used in the active voice will change its form in the passive voice. Just for example, me will change to I in the passive voice. I hope you understand that, right? Then we move to the third step. The third step is an important step where we change the verb that was used in the active voice to its third form of verb. Why it becomes important, children? Because you need to identify first which tense has been used there. Okay, and then accordingly you have to bring to your mind the third form of that particular verb, right? Sometimes we have the irregular verbs where we have different kind of third form of verb. So for that you need to understand, or you need to know that which particular third form of verb will be used for the given verb, right? And accordingly we need to see which is the helping verb that can go with the main verb, which is the fourth step. Yeah, why it is so important, children? Because third form of verb would have a helping verb before it. I'll repeat that. The third form of verb would always have a helping verb before that. It can be is, are, was, were, has, have, had. You can have those, but make sure that you know which kind of helping verb you need to use. And for that, you should know the verb and the tense that have been used in the sentence. Okay, so step 3 and step 4 is important to keep in mind, because there you need to use your knowledge about tenses, right? And the fifth step is use of the preposition by, right? Now this is one thing which is also equally important, because unless and until you use the preposition by, your sentence would remain incomplete. Okay, so in passive voice you have to have the inclusion of the preposition by, which is the fifth step. So when you see on your fingertips, you can count it. My first step is identifying subject, verb, object. Then my second step, my second finger would be swapping and changing of the pronouns. The third one will be to change the verb to third form of verb, that is V3. The fourth finger is for the step 4, where I would add a helping verb before the main verb. And the fifth important step would be to use the preposition by. So you need to keep in mind these 5 simple, easy steps to change the active voice to the passive voice. Now let's see this example. It has got its structure and the division as what we have just learned. So let's see over here. I've taken the same sentence. The teacher started online teaching. Now, what was the first step? The first step was to identify the subject, verb, and object in the sentence, right? So we identify the subject, that is the teacher, followed by the verb, that is started, and then the end of the sentence is with the object, online teaching. That is the regular structure of an active voice, SVO, right? Now, once you've identified that, how are you going to change it into passive? Now, we have already taken care of the first step of identifying SVO, right? Now, the second step was to swap, right? And to see whether a pronoun is used or not. In this case, there is no pronoun used, so we can omit that, right? But yes, swapping has to be done. You can see on the screen, I have put the cross over there. That is just an indication that the subject would take the place of the object and the object will take the place of the subject in the passive voice. For example, online teaching over there was at the end of the sentence in active voice. And now in passive voice, where do you find it? You find it at the beginning of the sentence, right? So that is an important swap that you have made. Accordingly, the teacher, which was at the beginning of the sentence in active voice, where do you find it now? You find it at the end of the sentence in the passive voice. Okay, so what would be a structure in the passive voice? It would be OVPS. O is the object, followed by the verb, and then there is something new over there. There's one more addition to it, that is P. P is the preposition, and then the subject. Okay, now if you take notice of the verb over here, you see that in active voice we have used the verb started, which is the simple past. So what do we have to do with the verbs in the passive voice? You have to retain the tense. If it is simple past, it has to be simple past, provided it is in the third form of the verb. Okay, so started would remain start, started, and the third form is started. So we have the third form of the verb started as started only. But then we also have to find out the helping verb because it has to come before the main verb, right? So we have to start finding out the verb that would go along with the simple past tense. Now we see here online teaching is singular, okay, and we are talking about past tense, simple past tense. So simple past tense will have was as the helping verb, right? So online teaching was started. Now we needed to include a preposition there, so we have used the preposition by. By whom? By the teacher, right? So this makes a complete, correct passive sentence. Okay. Now, after taking care of those 5 steps, you by heart, you learn it by heart, you have it on your fingertips. When you get a sentence, you start, say, identifying, swapping, changing the verb form and using the helping verb, and of course by as the preposition. So you feel, okay, fine, I have taken care of all the 5 steps, and sometimes you get that statement or you get that answer wrong and you are in a confusion as to why, what mistake have I made there. Now there are some common mistakes while changing active to passive voice. Okay, so let us see what are those common mistakes why students do make while changing from active to passive voice. Okay. Now the common mistakes made by people while changing active to passive voice. Number 1, adding by in all the sentences. Well, don't get confused. I know it is the 5th step that we have to include by as a preposition to complete the sentence, but then some sentences do not take by as a preposition. Yeah, it's slightly confusing, but you need to understand English is exceptional. There are some sentences where you follow a rule, but the same sentence may not follow the same rule in a given context. Okay. Okay, so that would come out of practice, children. You will understand it if you keep practicing those. You will come to know that this particular kind of sentence may not take by as a preposition. So that is one mistake that people usually make, because they have learned the 5 steps, right? And at the end of the 5th step, you know that you have to use the preposition by. And they just use the preposition by, thinking that the answer is complete. But there are some sentences that do not take by as the preposition. We'll practice it a little later. Okay. The second one is, when a sentence is understood, there is no need to add further details. Okay. For example, if you write a sentence and by writing half of the sentence, you realize that there was no need to write the object. You can omit that object. Okay. In some cases, we do have this kind of mistake, which we shall learn with one example. So this is one which you should keep in mind, that sometimes we don't have to write the complete sentence, because the half of the sentence in itself gives you the complete meaning. Okay. So you can omit the object. Now, whenever there is a use of axiom, adage, or a general statement, some agreement, some general truth, some saying, if there is something like that, then it is not required to change the subject into an object. Okay. And the last one, missing out the prepositions. Sometimes it so happens, children, because we are already using one preposition by in a sentence, sometimes it so happens that we tend to ignore or miss out of the preposition that is already used in the active voice, thinking that we cannot add 2 prepositions at the same time. Therefore, we miss out on the preposition that was already used in the sentence. We just write the one that was taught as a step by, and that makes the difference. Okay. Now we'll understand that by examples. The first mistake that I spoke about was adding by in all the sentences. Now, for example, I have a sentence here, the fire burnt the mall. Okay. Now, when we change it into passive voice, depending on all the 5 steps, immediately the student would write, the mall was burnt by the fire. All the 5 steps are very much there. But then that is wrong. Similarly, the other sentence, your sincerity pleased me. I was pleased by your sincerity. Now again, we are following the rules. All the 5 steps are very much there. Then why is it wrong? Now, the mistake here is very simple, yet sometimes it goes unnoticed, children. The fire burnt the mall. We write the mall was burnt by the fire, and it is wrong. The correct preposition would be in the fire, not by the fire. The mall was burnt in the fire, right? By the fire sometimes gives us the impression of someone burning down the mall, right? But burnt in the fire is the result. The mall was burnt in the fire. Okay, so such type of sentences do not take by as a preposition, but it takes in as the preposition. Okay, so that has to be taken care of. Similarly, your sincerity pleased me. We write, I was pleased by your sincerity, right? Generally we do so, but that is wrong, children, because the preposition that would go by this sentence would be, I was pleased with your sincerity. Okay, with your sincerity, not by your sincerity. Okay, now these kind of sentences are so uncommon or so not so very regularly used, children, that we don't actually pay attention to the change of the preposition, right? So if you keep practicing it, use it in your daily conversation, okay, in the correct form which is required here, then I think you can master it, because it just needs 2-3 usage, 2-3 applications in your daily conversation, and once you know the structure, you would not make a mistake even if you are changing it into passive voice. Okay. Then there was the second one where I said that when a sentence is understood, then there is no need of adding details, right? Now the example is, police arrested me. we write the complete structure. I was arrested by the police, right? Now, in this case, I was arrested is enough too. Why? Because by the police is understood. Of course, you'll be arrested by the police, right? So sometimes these kind of sentences which give you enough meaning in itself doesn't require an object. I was arrested. Simple as that. Okay, so that is correct. People speak English all over the world. We write the complete thing, English all over the world by the people, right? But sometimes we should avoid that. We can omit the object here because we know English is spoken all over the world is enough. By the people, of course, there is no particular section only that by the people. No, you don't have animals speaking languages, right? It's the people understood. So when you have that, you can omit that, right? If it is a specific language we are talking about, then of course we can, because that would be limited to a particular country or a region or so, right? There we can use, of course, the specific person or people mentioned. But otherwise, if it is a general statement like this, English is spoken all over the world by the people, then by the people can be omitted. Okay. Now, this is something which you have to understand, children. Whenever there is a use of axiom, adage, or a general statement, some general truth or saying, right, or proverbs, there is no need to change the subject into an object. For example, everyone should speak the truth, right? So when we change it into passive, usually what do? We change it, we bring the subject here on the object side and the object to the subject side. So we write the truth should be spoken by everyone, right? Instead of that, we can just write the truth should be spoken by everyone is understood. It's not that truth should be spoken only by Indians or truth should be spoken only by Americans. It is a general agreed truth that truth should be spoken. So there is no need to mention by everyone. So we don't have to change the object's place over there, okay? Or the subject to object's place. Secondly, we should respect the poor. We all agree, right? If you go to any part of the world, they will agree that we should respect the poor. Okay? It stands for everyone. It holds truth for everyone. Okay? So the poor should be respected by us. What have we done? When we use by us, we have curtailed it. We have limited it to us. The poor should be respected by us, not by our neighbors, not by our countrymen, not by so and so people, but by us. So we have made it slightly wrong. Rather, if we just write the poor should be respected, there we include everybody, should be respected by everybody, all countries, the whole world for that matter. Okay, so there we need not write the subject by us. Now, if suppose there's a confusion, see this particular sentence. This example will clarify it. When a specific person or situation has been mentioned, only then we will use by. For example, I helped him. Now here a specific person has helped that whoever it is, right? It's not my brother, it's not my family members, it's not my neighbors, it's not my countrymen, it is I have helped him. So I helped him is specific in a specific situation. In this case, we need to mention the subject. Who helped? I helped. Okay, he was helped by me, right? You can see there the change of the pronoun there. I has changed to me. Okay, so whenever we are talking about some specific person or situation, definitely we need to use the subject. Okay, because that is for for the specific person, not for the entire world. That's not a general saying. I helped, maybe the other person may not be helpful. That's okay, right? So here we need to use it. That would help you to understand why the general statement do not require the subject to be changed into an object, and when there is a specific person or situation mentioned, definitely you have to use the subject as the object. Okay. Now let us look at this common mistake, missing out the prepositions. For example, The witness is staring at the culprit. The witness is staring at the culprit. You can see here in active voice, we have already used at as a preposition. Now, it so happens that children, while changing it into passive voice, following all the 5 steps they have in their mind, they start writing the sentence or the answer. Okay. Now there, what do? The culprit is being stared. They know that there is a preposition that they have to use, that is by. So they focus on that preposition by and include it in the sentence and make the sentence as the culprit is being stared by the witness. Right? But that is wrong. Why? Because we have missed out on the preposition that was used originally in the active voice. And what was that? That was at, right? Sometimes it so happens that the children get confused that how can we use 2 prepositions at the same time, right? But then understand this, children, that if there is a preposition used in the active voice, we have to retain it in the passive voice. Okay, so your correct answer would be the culprit is being stared at by the witness. Get that? See the second example. He is pointing at you. Right? You are being pointed by him. You have changed the meaning. You have changed the sentence. Right? So what would be the correct sentence? Retain the preposition used in the active and use your preposition, that is by, right? So what would be your correct sentence? Your sentence would be, you are being pointed at by him. You get that? Okay. There's this revision here. When verb is in present continuous tense, then while changing the active voice to passive voice, you will always add being. Yes, you will always add being. Now that we have finished with understanding the golden rules of changing active to passive, as well as the steps involved in doing so, keeping in mind the mistakes, common mistakes that students make, let us do some exercises. We can change the following sentences from active to passive. I have 10 sentences in front of you, which are in active voice, and I would like you to practice it and solve it, find the answers in the passive. Children, unless and until you practice it, you cannot perfect it. Okay. Now the rules are in front of you. The steps are also in front of you. You understood the mistakes that few people make in changing it into passive. Use that in these sentences. If you keep practicing 2-3 times and realize that, okay, these are the steps involved, each and every sentence that you take, you open your finger, try to go step by step, keep reminding yourself what is the first step, the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth, and then accordingly use it in your sentence. If you use all the 5 steps, definitely your answer would be correct. Okay, so I would like you to start solving this exercise, write the answers, and then my next slide has the answers for these sentences. Don't check on the answers before you finish this exercise. Okay, in that way you would help yourself realizing where exactly you made a mistake. If you did so, play the video again, go back to the rules, understand the steps involved, and then try to rectify those mistakes. Okay, once you do that, I'm sure you would master the active and the passive voice, right? So dear students, I hope you have understood the nuances of today's topic, that is active and passive voice, and were able to clarify most of your doubts. I would advise you to go back to the video once again at your own pace. Understand the rules and the steps thoroughly and try to practice 1 or 2 sentences using the same. Once you do that, I trust you will be able to do really well with this topic. So happy learning, take care, and God bless.